I can recall countless nights of stressing about how our expenses would change once we moved aboard. We lived a charmed life in Atlanta, and I wasn't sure I could give it all up. If you're worried or even just curious about the cost of land life versus boat life, this one's for you.
One thing that we struggled with when we were doing our research and planning for this was to figure out how much we could actually expect to spend on a day-to-day basis. We found a number of people who were willing to share their cruising budgets, but we didn't know how that compared to their budget when they lived on land. The one thing that we had always heard was that you can expect to spend about the same amount of money for when you live on land versus when you live on a boat. But we just couldn't find anything that corroborated that. Now that we've been on the boat for 3 or 4 months, we have enough data of what our day-to-day life on the boat looks like from an expenses standpoint, and we wanted to compare that with how much we spent on land, just in case someone else out there is looking for that kind of information. We're going to go back to the boat and talk about it.
Phoenix, do you know how much money we spent? Yes, that blank look, that's perfect.
The way we decided to talk about this today was to break down all of our land expenses and compare them to all of our boat expenses over the last 3 months. We break our finances down into 3 major categories: fixed, variable, and savings.
And before we get started, we wanted to let you guys know about a program called Tiller. This is not sponsored, but over the last 10 years, I have used every possible financial tracking program out there that you can imagine. And the one that we eventually settled on was Tiller. And the reason for that was because we're data nerds and I really like to customize everything to my own exact specifications. And Tiller lets you just import your transactions into a Google Sheet or an Excel doc automatically. And then you can do whatever you want with it because it's your spreadsheet. So you don't have to worry about using someone else's system in the way that they think you should use it. So if you want to check something like that out, we'll put a link in the description below. Again, not sponsored, just something that it took me a long time to find, and so I like to spread the word.
All of the charts that we're going to show you guys today are possible because of Tiller.
Yeah. So we're going to run through the fixed expenses first. Jess, do you want to explain what that is?
Fixed expenses are things with a set price month over month. So it shouldn't vary too much. Something like your mortgage. Every single month it's going to be the same.
So the first major fixed category that we have is what we're dubbing ownership. And ownership on land was mortgage, real estate taxes, and homeowners insurance. And that consisted of 29% of our total monthly budget.
On the boat, obviously we don't have a mortgage, but we do have a loan that is basically our mortgage. And we have insurance. And those two together make up 12% of our monthly budget.
So why are we talking in percentages?
Good question. We wanted to do this in percentages because everybody's budget varies so much. And when we were doing this research, we couldn't find anybody that had a budget just like ours. But we figured if we did it in percentages, then you could take those percentages and compare them to your budget much easier. And we just really wanted to be able to put information out there that would be useful to more people.
Okay, so next up is monthly bills, and this is, things like utilities, so electric, gas, internet, cell phones, etc. And while we were living on land, made up a total of 6% of our monthly take-home budget.
On the boat, a lot of those monthly bills have changed, and they have been limited to things like our cell phone, life insurance, and personal property insurance. And our overall spend has gone down to 3% of our overall budget.
It looks like life on the water will be a lot less expensive than land life, but the majority of our savings at this point are due to the fact that our boat payment is only about a third of the cost of our house payment.
Next up for us was loans, and while we were living on land, we had one car that was fully paid for and one car that had a car payment, and then I still have some student loans that are being paid off, so the car payment and the student loans made up a total of 4% of our monthly take-home.
And on the boat, since we got rid of that car payment, it's gone down to 2% of our monthly take-home.
Getting rid of the car saved us a ton of money each month, not only on the loan, but on the insurance as well.
That brings us to dogs. So the dogs aren't cheap. Those of you who have pets probably can understand that. This was not something we would spend every month, taking their annuals and things like that. They both get their teeth cleaned every year into consideration. We spent an average of 3% of our monthly take home on the dogs every month.
On the boat, that's actually gone up a little bit because we needed to get their health certificates to go to the Bahamas and just extra checks and visits to the vet, so that actually went up to 4%.
Expenses for the dogs was the first time we found that boat life was more expensive. Getting both kids squared away for the Bahamas was over $1,000.
And the last major category for our fixed expenses is maintenance, and luckily we lived in a home that didn't require a lot of maintenance. And so while we were living on land, we budgeted 1% of our total monthly take-home for maintenance on the house.
Ooh. And really quick, before I get into maintenance on the boat, do you want to say what this does and doesn't include?
Yes. So we are not including anything that was identified as needing repair during the survey. We negotiated with the sellers for those concessions on the purchase price to get those repairs done. So all of those repairs, we talked about how much they cost in a different video, which we will link below, but that's not included anything maintenance related.
And geesh, this is a huge jump. Now keep in mind, we haven't actually spent this, but we are budgeting 27% of our monthly take home for maintenance on the boat. It'll all just go into a savings pot for maintenance until the time comes where we need to use it.
Everyone has told us 10 to 20% of the cost of the boat every year. So that number is 10% of the cost of the boat for the year, taken as a monthly number. Again, we haven't had to do any maintenance after the survey repairs just yet. So fingers crossed that we don't actually have to spend that much money, but if we do, it's there.
Those maintenance fees really tipped the scale and made boat life more expensive than our cushy brick and mortar habitat.
All in all, our fixed costs have actually risen slightly. Again, that's mostly because of a budgeted maintenance number that we haven't seen yet. But on land, we spent 43% of our monthly budget.
And on the boat so far, we've spent 49%.
So that brings us into our variable expenses. And these are typically much more fun things. So these are things you have some direct control over, like how much you spend on your groceries, how much you go out, any sort of entertainment value, shopping, things like that. So that's all kind of lumped into our variable expenses. And our number one variable expense has always been entertainment. For us, again, this is, we like to go out with our friends, date nights, books, videos, those sorts of things all fall under what we call entertainment. And we spend 10% of our monthly take-home on our entertainment budget.
Hasn't changed too much on the boat. We have taken it down 2% for a total of 8%.
The next largest variable expense was travel on land. We would always budget 8% of our monthly budget for travel. I wouldn't always use it every month. This is another one of those categories where we would build up some savings and then spend it all at once.
Travel looks a little different here on the boat side of the world. Now, most of our travel fees are things like dockage, Airbnb, car rentals, and airfare. We have kept that number the same at 8% for boat life.
For us anyway, it's somewhat ironic, I think, because almost all of our travel budget when we lived in the house was spent chartering boats. And now that we live on a boat, almost all of our travel budget is spent going back home.
I'm sure we'll be dipping into those travel funds to purchase diesel to get down to the Bahamas in the next couple of days.
So our next largest variable expense was groceries, and that was 7%.
And 7% of our budget on the boat. The exact same.
What we've learned is that your variable expenses don't change just because you live on a boat.
The next category was shopping. Shopping included things like household goods, clothes, gifts for each other and friends, and shopping made up 5% of our monthly take-home budget.
Shopping on the boat includes all the exact same things, but we've really limited our clothes budget since we have no room for any more clothes, and household items. We don't have a whole lot of room for any of that either, so that has gone down to 2%.
Our habits changed here, and therefore so did our spending. That's pretty much a life lesson. Nothing changes until you make a change.
And our last variable spending category was personal care. And personal care includes medical expenses, skincare, hair care, anything else?
No, just a whole bunch of Jess.
Yeah.
Well, not all me, but
Charles liked to get his hair cut every 2 weeks. It's not happening on the boat anymore, but when we lived on land, I probably spent more on my hair than Jess did, or at least haircuts.
yeah.
And all in all, that made up 3% of our monthly take-home budget.
On the boat, it is 2% of our monthly take-home.
You can't spend money in the salon or the spa if you can't get there.
For all of our variable expenses, while we lived on land, that made up 32% of our monthly budget.
And on the boat, we are down to 27%.
That brings us to the last major category, which is savings. And while we lived on land, we were able to save 25% of our monthly budget.
And on the boat, went down a little bit. We are still saving 24% of our monthly take-home, though.
Yep. That basically means our expenses, we're saving almost the exact same amount of money. And by the way, a big portion of that maybe can be saved if we don't have to spend as much money on maintenance. The adage of you'll spend the same on land as you do on the boat is certainly holding true for us so far, and we didn't try. While we lived on land, we had a really good system down, and we didn't really look at the budget. We basically would spend about the same every month, and so taking that experience onto the boat, we haven't tried to hit our budget.
So it's interesting that we're spending pretty much the same amount on the boat as we were on land. One thing that I'm thinking might change is our entertainment as we head down to the Bahamas. Hopefully we're doing a lot more going out for hikes and spending time swimming and hanging out on a beach with the dogs than going out to a restaurant or a bar. So hopefully our entertainment will go down a little bit once we get to the Bahamas, and if that does change, we will be sure to update you guys in a later video.
If this is something you're interested in, you found it helpful. Hopefully, if you're thinking about moving onto a boat, we answered some questions that you may have had. If we didn't, please feel free to ask them in the comments below.
And if you want to see any other financial breakdowns from us, like, I don't know, the cost of living on anchor versus the cost of living in a marina, or the cost of living on the East Coast on a boat versus in the Bahamas, let us know in the comments below, and we'll be sure to hook you guys up with more information on the financials.
Yep. So if you're still with us, thanks for watching. Go ahead and subscribe if you're new here. Throw us a like. And again, any questions, comments, concerns, drop them in the comments below, and we'll get back to you.
Thanks, guys. Have a great week.